The twin suns of Velfar hung in the sky, burning red and white over the giant stone arena. Thousands of alien spectators filled the seats, shouting, cheering, waiting for their king's command. This was not just a battle arena. It was a place of power, where the strong ruled and the weak were broken. The king of Velfar sat on a tall black throne made of jagged steel. He was old but cruel, with eyes that searched for entertainment, not justice. In front of him stood his champion, a tall and powerful alien warrior. She wore thick silver armor, shaped with sharp edges and royal markings. Her name was Veloraka, and everyone knew her. She had never lost a fight. Her hands could crush bones, and her sword was heavier than most humans. She was more than a fighter. She was a symbol of pride for the Velfar race. The king raised his hand, and the crowd fell silent. A gate opened at the far end of the arena, and two guards dragged a human forward. His hands were chained, and his clothes were dirty. He looked thin but calm. His back was straight. His eyes didn't show fear. The people booed and laughed, some throwing scraps into the sand. To them, humans were weak animals, remnants of a race that lost long ago. But this man didn't act like a broken prisoner. He walked on his own, even though the guards tried to push him. He stared at the king with quiet strength. It wasn't anger. It was something else. Something colder. The king smiled. "This human insulted one of our commanders," he said loudly. "Let him pay for his foolishness, with his pride." The crowd cheered. He looked at Veloraka. "Warrior, humiliate him. Do not kill him yet. Break his body. Break his spirit." Veloraka nodded. She stepped forward, her armor shining in the sunlight. She didn't see a challenge. She saw a task, a performance. Her lips curled into a cold smile as she drew her sword and pointed it toward the human. "What's your name, human?" she asked, her voice loud enough for all to hear. The man said nothing. He didn't flinch. He simply looked at her, then looked at the king. "You may begin," the king said. The chains were unlocked. The human stood still, his hands free, but clearly outmatched. He had no armor, no weapon. Veloraka stepped toward him, swinging her sword in a slow, wide circle. She spoke again. "I will not end you yet, but I will make you kneel." Still, the human did not speak, but his feet moved, just a little. His weight shifted. His eyes narrowed. The crowd sensed something, but they didn't know what. They laughed again, expecting a short fight. Maybe even a comedy. Veloraka rushed forward. She swung fast and sharp, aiming for his shoulder. The human ducked. The blade passed over his head, and dust rose where it struck the ground. The crowd gasped. Veloraka turned, her face now serious. The human was not only standing, he was balanced. His movements were trained, not wild. This was no common prisoner. She stepped back and swung again, this time faster. He dodged once more, and her armor scraped against the stone as she missed. The crowd fell silent. This was not how these fights went. "Fight me, coward," she shouted, angry now. The human finally moved forward. No words, no sound, just a single clean step. Then he struck. It wasn't a wild punch. It was precise. He hit the center of her armor with the base of his palm, just below the ribs, right where her plating met. A strange crack echoed through the arena. Veloraka staggered. Her armor split in the center. A part of it slid down with a heavy sound. The crowd stood. The king leaned forward, eyes wide. Veloraka took a breath. Her chest heaved. Her sword dropped into the sand. The human didn't press forward. He stepped back again, calm, his hands lowered. He was not attacking. He was waiting. Veloraka looked at him, not as prey, but with something new in her eyes. Respect, or confusion. The king stood from his throne, his voice lost for a moment. Then he shouted, "Stop the fight." Guards rushed in, weapons drawn, but no one moved. The The human raised his hands peacefully. He offered no fight. The audience was no longer laughing. In just one strike, everything had changed. Guards rushed toward the human with sharp weapons raised. The king's voice still echoed in the arena. "Seize him." The human did not run. He didn't fight back either. He simply stood still, his arms lowered by his sides. His calm face confused the guards. Some of them hesitated. Others surrounded him in a circle, but no one moved to strike. Veloreka was still standing where he had hit her. She looked down at the crack in her armor, then up at the human. Her pride had taken a blow harder than her body. Never in her life had she been touched in battle like that. Never had she been made to look weak. Not in front of the king, not in front of the people. She took a slow breath. "Who are you?" she asked. The human's eyes met hers. "You don't remember us," he said in a steady voice, "but we remember everything." Veloreka stepped closer, ignoring the guards. Her blade was still on the ground, but she didn't pick it up. "You're no prisoner. You're trained." That strike, it was perfect. The human looked toward the king's throne. "You think we're animals. You treat us like toys. But you forgot what made us dangerous." The king's face was red with anger now. "Enough. Guards, bind him in chains. I want his name. I want to know how he dared to strike my warrior." Still, the guards didn't move. One of them, a younger alien with unsure eyes, asked softly, "My king, should we kill him now?" "No," the king snapped. "He will suffer. I want answers before he dies." The guards moved forward again, this time slowly. Two stepped behind the human, holding out chains. The human did not resist. He allowed the cold metal to wrap around his wrists. But even in chains, he looked stronger than before. As they took him away, Veloreka followed. The king did not stop her. The dungeons beneath the arena were damp and dark. Thick stone walls held hundreds of prisoners, most of them silent and tired. But this cell had only one man, the human who broke the arena's silence. Veloreka stood outside the bars. "You could have killed me," she said. "I didn't need to," he replied. "Breaking pride is stronger than spilling blood." She paused. That strike, it was military training, not something a normal man knows. "Who taught you?" The human looked up at her from the bench inside his cell. "The old Earth Command." Veloreka frowned. That force was destroyed long ago. He shook his head. Pieces of it lived on. "We were forgotten, left behind in the final surrender. The galaxy thought we were gone. But we were waiting, watching, learning." She leaned closer. "What is your name?" He looked her in the eye. "Call me Noah." She repeated the name softly. "Noah." He noticed her tone had changed. Less pride, more curiosity. "You don't hate humans, do you?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "I was trained to see humans as lesser, weak, unimportant. But now I wonder, how many others like you are out there?" Noah stood. The chains clanked. Enough to remind your kind that humans were never weak. We only lost the last war because we fought with rules. Next time, we won't. Veloreka turned and walked away in silence. Later that evening, in the royal chambers, the king met with his high advisors. They were angry, worried, and confused. "This is not just a human," one said. "He knows things, military things." That strike was precise. It broke a champion's armor with no weapon. Another advisor added, "He might be a symbol now. Word is already spreading among the lower levels. The other humans are talking about him." The king slammed his hand on the table, then silenced them. "Use fear, use force. But what if force makes them rise?" The room grew quiet. No one had a clear answer. Back in the dungeon, a group of guards brought food to Noah. One of them, the younger alien from before, looked at him with a strange mix of fear and respect. "Why didn't you run when you had the chance?" he asked. Noah smiled lightly. Because I needed them to see. You don't win revolutions in silence. You win them by standing tall, even in chains. The young guard looked down, unsure of what to say. Then Noah added, What's your name? Kirin, the guard replied. Thank you for not striking me, Kirin. Kirin nodded slowly, then walked away with his thoughts spinning. Deep inside the king's mind, a new fear was forming. He had created the fight to show power over humans, but the result was the opposite. A single man had challenged his rule without breaking a law. No wild attack, no open rebellion, just one strike, one moment, one silent message. The humans were waking up. And this time, they remembered everything. The sun had set, leaving the arena under a blanket of cool darkness. Inside the dungeons of Velfar's grand palace, Noah sat alone, his wrists still bound in chains. The cold stone floor beneath him was uncomfortable, but his mind was alert. Every sound, every creak of the walls, every shift in the air, he felt it all. He had been here before, in similar places, but this time, there was a difference. The king's command had been clear. Noah would be humiliated, but one strike had shattered more than Velraka's armor. It had cracked open the foundation of everything the king believed. The humans were not beaten. They had only been sleeping. Noah had felt Velraka's eyes on him as she left. He knew she was confused. He had seen the doubt in her once proud eyes. She had been the perfect warrior, the crown jewel of Velfar's military. Now she was questioning everything. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Noah stood quickly, his chains rattling. He didn't know who was coming, but he was ready. He had been waiting for this moment. The cell door creaked open, and Velraka stepped inside. She wasn't wearing her armor now, just a simple tunic and boots. She looked more human in her relaxed state, though her posture was still stiff and proud. You're still here, Noah said, his voice calm, almost casual. Velraka didn't answer right away. She just stood there, studying him. You should be afraid, she said. The king wants you to pay for what you did. He wants to break you, like we broke your people. Noah met her gaze. You don't know what it's like to truly be broken. She narrowed her eyes. I don't. No, he said softly. You've never lost everything. You've never watched your people fight a war they can't win, and then be forgotten when it's over. Velraka stepped closer to the bars, her eyes still on him. And yet, you're not broken. He smiled faintly. Because we never forget, even when they think we're gone. For a moment, there was silence between them. Velraka seemed to wrestle with something. Doubt, maybe, or curiosity. You said something earlier, she began, about your people being forgotten. About a military force. What do you mean? Noah's eyes flickered to the ground, then back to her. There are more of us, humans scattered across the galaxy, living in hiding. Some of us were left behind after the war. Others were kept as prisoners. We learned how to survive. Velraka was silent for a moment, as if processing his words. You have allies. No, Noah said, shaking his head. Not allies. Survivors. We've learned to fight in the shadows, to plan. He could see her trying to piece together the picture. She had been taught to believe humans were weak. They had been slaves, prisoners, or worse, just part of the past. But Noah was showing her something different. He wasn't a prisoner. He was a warrior in his own right. And his words were heavy with truth. What happens if your people come? She asked, her voice quieter now, uncertain. Then, Noah said, his eyes hardening, we rise. Just then, the door to the dungeon creaked open, and 2 guards stepped in. Velraka turned her attention to them. Leave us. The guards hesitated. One of them spoke, but the king. I said leave us, Velraka repeated, her tone now sharp. The guards exchanged a nervous glance but obeyed, exiting without another word. When the door closed behind them, Velraka took a step closer to Noah. "You think the king will let this go?" she asked. "He can't control what he doesn't understand," Noah replied. "He can try to crush us, but he's afraid of what we might become, and fear is always weaker than strength." She looked at him for a long time, studying his face, his expression. There was a fire in his eyes, something she hadn't seen in a human before. He was different from the others, the ones who had given up long ago. He didn't just survive. He fought, with everything he had. "You broke my armor," Velreka said slowly, almost to herself. "But you didn't kill me." Noah nodded. "I didn't need to." "Why not?" she asked. "I thought you humans were supposed to be weak." "We are weak," he said, "until we aren't." She tilted her head, considering his words. The strength in his voice, the certainty, the calmness in the face of certain death. It was unlike anything she had expected from a human. "There's something different about you," she said, her voice softer now. He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what you need to see. We're not all the same." Velreka stepped back, her expression changing. "The king will punish you for this. He will punish all of us for what you did today." Noah's gaze never wavered. "Let him. We'll be ready." The next day, the air in Velfar's palace felt different. Tension hung in every corner, thick and heavy. The king sat on his throne, staring at the floor, his mind racing. He had been humiliated in front of the entire arena. A single human, one man, had broken the pride of his greatest warrior. And now, that same man was still alive. His advisors stood in front of him, speaking in hushed voices. They debated what should happen next. One of them, a tall alien with deep purple skin, stepped forward. "My king," he said carefully, "we can no longer ignore the truth. The humans, they're not the same. If they were able to train a warrior like this one, then we must assume there are more of them." The king slammed his fist on the armrest of his throne. "No, they are nothing. We are the ones who conquered them, who taught them to kneel. One strike does not change that. But we've seen their strength, my king," another advisor interrupted. "If we continue underestimating them, we may face a rebellion. We cannot afford to make the same mistake twice." The king's eyes narrowed, the heat of anger rising within him. "Then we will crush them. All of them." The advisor bowed, but the worry in his eyes didn't disappear. "Perhaps, my king, we must reconsider our methods." Meanwhile, in the dungeons beneath the palace, Noah sat in his cell, reflecting on the events of the previous day. He had been alone since Velreka left him, but that wasn't something he feared. Alone was something he had learned to be for many years. The question on his mind was simple. Why had Velreka hesitated? Why had she walked away without fighting? He had given her an opportunity to strike back, to regain her pride. But she didn't. She left. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. A guard appeared at the cell door. This time, it wasn't just any guard. It was Kieran, the young alien who had hesitated the day before. Kieran unlocked the door slowly, his eyes shifting nervously. "You came back," Noah said, his voice steady. I had to see you again," Kieran admitted, stepping inside. "I've never seen anything like what happened in the arena. No one has." Noah gave him a slight smile. "That's what they're afraid of." Kieran looked around as if checking for anyone nearby. Then he lowered his voice. "What is it that you want from us? From me?" Noah leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I want the truth to be seen. We've been silent for too long. The humans you think are weak. We're not. You'll see that soon enough." Kieran shook his head. "I don't know if I can help you. My people, they'll never allow it. The king, he's too strong. We've lived under his rule for so long." Noah's eyes softened, and he stood, walking closer to the bars of the cell. "You have a choice. All of you do. But you have to choose now. Stand with the king, and you stay in chains, just like the humans. or you stand with what's right, and you fight for something more. Kieran looked down, his thoughts clearly torn. I don't know what's right anymore. Noah reached through the bars and placed a hand on the young guard's shoulder. It's not easy to see the truth, but it's there. You're just too afraid to open your eyes. Kieran pulled away, his expression uncertain. I don't know if I can trust you. You're a human. You're my enemy. Noah shook his head slowly. I'm not your enemy. I'm just a man who wants freedom. For all of us. In the royal chamber, Veloreka stood before the king. The humiliation of the previous day still burned inside her, but there was something else now. Doubt. She had always believed in her strength. She had always believed that no one could challenge her. But now, she was unsure. The king looked at her, his eyes cold. You failed, Veloreka. She stood tall, not lowering her gaze. I did not fail, my king. The human. He showed me something I did not expect. He did not fight like the others. He was different. Different. The king laughed bitterly. He humiliated you in front of the entire planet. That is all that matters. Veloreka stepped forward. It's not about humiliation, my king. It's about power. And he has power. He made me question everything I've ever known. Everything you've ever taught us. The king's expression darkened. Do not forget your place, warrior. You are mine to command. She didn't flinch. Then, command me to fight him again. I want to prove myself to you. The king paused, considering her words. Finally, he nodded. Very well. We will fight again. But this time, there will be no mercy. In the depths of the palace, the seeds of rebellion were being sown. Noah, trapped in the dungeon, had already made his choice. His path was set. He would not be a slave any longer. And soon, Veloreka would join him, or be left behind. The war had already begun. The days following the arena battle felt heavy in the palace of Velfar. Word had spread like wildfire across the planet. The humans, once thought to be weak and broken, were showing signs of something much more dangerous. Strength. The king's advisors were growing restless. His control over the galaxy was slipping, and they all feared that a rebellion was on the horizon. Veloreka had spent the last few days locked in her own thoughts. She no longer felt the same confidence she once did. The one strike from Noah had done more than just shatter her armor. It had shattered the certainty she'd lived with her whole life. She had never questioned her superiority over humans before. But now she couldn't stop thinking about that look in Noah's eyes. The calm, steady strength he had shown in the face of certain death. The king had ordered her to prepare for another battle. This time, he promised, there would be no mercy. The time for testing was over. But Veloreka wasn't sure anymore. The king wanted her to destroy Noah completely, to prove once and for all that humans were nothing more than toys for the Velfar to play with. But she had begun to see him as more than just a prisoner. Meanwhile, in the depths of the palace's dungeons, Noah sat waiting. His chains were still on, but he no longer cared. He had spoken with Kieran, the young guard, the night before, and he could feel the tension building in the air. Kieran was struggling with what he had learned, and Noah could sense it. The young alien was torn between loyalty to his people and the truth that Noah had revealed. Noah stood up and walked to the small window of his cell. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the land. The palace was quiet, but Noah knew that soon everything would change. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore. He was fighting for the future of all humans, for all the ones who had been forgotten. Veloreka stood before the king in the grand hall, her mind racing. She had come to a decision, though she wasn't sure if it would be enough. She had to speak to him. She had to tell him the truth, her truth. My king, she began, her voice steady, but carrying the weight of everything she was about to say. I need to speak to you. The king looked up from his throne, his eyes sharp. What is it, Veloreka? She took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. The human, Noah. He's not what we think. He's stronger than we imagined." The king raised an eyebrow, his expression cold. "Stronger? What do you mean?" "I mean," Velreka continued, "he has something we didn't account for. A power that goes beyond physical strength. He has a purpose, a reason to fight." She paused. "And I fear if we push him too far, it won't just be him we're facing. It will be every human who has been oppressed, every human who's been forced to hide." The king's face darkened. "Are you suggesting we back down? That we let him go?" "No," Velreka said firmly. "I'm suggesting that we prepare ourselves. We cannot underestimate them. Not again." The king's eyes narrowed. "You've lost your edge, warrior. You let a human defeat you in front of the entire planet. You let them see weakness." Velreka's eyes flashed with a fire that hadn't been there before. "No, I let them see strength." She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Humans fight for survival. They fight for something real. I've never known a fight like theirs. They don't just fight for victory. They fight for something worth losing everything for." The king scoffed. "You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. I will deal with him, and I will deal with you if you question me again." Velreka stood tall, but her heart was heavy. She knew the king would never change his mind. But she also knew that Noah's words had changed something inside of her. She could no longer ignore what was coming. Back in the dungeon, Noah's door opened, and Kieran stepped inside, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Noah," he said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you." Noah looked at him, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" "The king has ordered the final fight," Kieran said, his voice low. "Velreka is preparing. This time, she won't hesitate. She's going to kill you." Noah nodded. He had expected this. It was only a matter of time before the king decided to end him for good. But he wasn't afraid. "Do you think I can be stopped?" Noah asked calmly. Kieran looked away, his face conflicted. "I don't know. But there's something else. Velreka, she's not the same. I think she sees it now. What you said. She's not like the other warriors." Noah's eyes softened. "She's not your enemy, Kieran. She's been trained to believe things about humans that aren't true. Just like you have. But the truth is, we are stronger than they ever gave us credit for. And now they know." Kieran hesitated, then nodded. "I can't help you escape, but I will make sure you get a fair chance." Noah stood up and gripped the bars of his cell. "I don't need a fair chance. I just need the opportunity to show them what humans are capable of." The time had come. The arena was packed once again. The sky above was clear, and the crowd was waiting, murmuring in excitement. They had been told this would be the final fight, the final act of humiliation for the human prisoner. But no one knew what to expect from Velreka. She stood tall in her armor, her expression unreadable. And in the center of the arena stood Noah, chained but unbroken. The battle was about to begin. The arena was more crowded than ever before. The tension in the air was so thick that it felt like the very walls were holding their breath. The entire planet of Velfar had been waiting for this moment. The king had promised that the human would be destroyed. The humiliation of his defeat, the breaking of Velreka's armor, had caused a stir that rippled through the palace. And now, this final fight would settle everything. Noah stood alone in the center of the arena, his wrists still chained, his back straight. His eyes were calm. He had known this moment would come, and he was ready. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for every human who had ever been oppressed, for every person who had been forgotten. Velreka stepped into the arena, her armor gleaming under the harsh light of the twin suns. Her sword hung by her side, but she didn't draw it yet. She walked toward Noah, her steps heavy with determination, but there was something different in her eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something else, something uncertain. The crowd grew silent as she stopped in front of him. She didn't speak right away, her gaze lingering on his calm face. She had fought countless opponents before, but never one like him. She had underestimated him, but now she saw the truth. This human was no ordinary prisoner. There was something inside him that had never been broken. And that terrified her. "I'm not the same as I was before," she finally said, her voice softer than Noah expected. "You changed something inside me." Noah nodded. "I didn't want to change you. I just wanted you to see the truth." Velereka tightened her grip on her sword. "Then you'll see the truth of what I am now." She raised her blade and stepped forward, her eyes locked on Noah's. The fight had begun. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the arena as Velereka's sword swung toward Noah. He moved quickly, dodging to the side just as the blade cut through the air where he had been standing. The crowd gasped, but Noah didn't react. He didn't need to. He had been trained for moments like this. Velereka swung again, but Noah was faster this time. He ducked and rolled to the side, his chains rattling. He was careful not to move too quickly. He didn't want to give her an opening. The chain around his wrists might slow him down, but it wouldn't stop him. Velereka seemed frustrated. She attacked again and again, each strike faster and harder, but Noah was always one step ahead. His movements were smooth, his body moving with the precision of someone who had been trained in combat for years. He didn't fight out of anger or fear. He fought out of necessity. For the first time, Velereka hesitated. She was used to defeating her opponents with ease, but Noah wasn't like the others. His calmness was unsettling. Kirin stood at the edge of the arena, watching with wide eyes. He had never seen anything like this before. The human was fighting like a seasoned warrior, his movements sharp and controlled. The warrior inside him was clear now. Noah wasn't just a man. He was a force. Kirin's gaze shifted to Velereka. She was getting frustrated. Her strikes were growing more erratic. He had never seen her like this. She had always been in control. But now she seemed to be losing that control with every swing. He couldn't help but feel something stir inside him. He had seen the truth, just as Velereka had. Humans weren't weak. They were survivors. And that was something the Velfar could never truly understand. Back in the center of the arena, the fight raged on. Noah moved with precision, always staying just out of reach of Velereka's blade. He was tiring her out, but he wasn't pushing too hard. He knew better than to fight with everything he had. He needed to show them, all of them, what humans were capable of, but he didn't want to kill Velereka. He wanted her to understand. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Velereka paused. She was breathing heavily now, sweat dripping down her face. The blade in her hand felt heavier with every swing, and the weight of her armor was beginning to slow her down. She stared at Noah, unsure of what to do next. Noah didn't give her the chance to think. He made his move. He stepped forward, his chained hands moving with the grace of a fighter who had nothing to lose. With one quick motion, he swept her legs out from under her. Velereka hit the ground with a crash, her sword skidding across the sand. The arena was silent. The crowd waited, breathless. Noah stood over her, his chains still clinking with each movement. His eyes were focused, not with hatred, but with a steady resolve. "You're not the enemy," Noah said, his voice calm but strong. "You've been trained to believe that humans are nothing. But we're more than you think." Velereka lay on the ground, breathing heavily. She stared up at him, her pride shattered, her body defeated. She had never thought she would be the one on the ground, staring up at a human. For the first time, she understood. She wasn't just losing a fight. She was losing a war that had been going on for far longer than she could comprehend. Noah extended a hand to her. "It's not too late to choose a different path. You don't have to fight for them anymore." For a long moment, Velereka didn't move, but then, slowly, she took his hand. The arena was filled with tension as the last moments of the battle unfolded. The crowd was completely silent, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Velereka, the undefeated champion of Velfar, lay on the ground, defeated by a single human. And Noah, the human who had defied expectations, stood over her, his chains rattling quietly. The king's face was hard to read from his high throne. He was still, unmoving, but inside, rage burned. His champion had failed. A human had defeated her. The pride of Velfar had been broken. The king clenched his fists, his thoughts swirling with fury and disbelief. This was not how it was supposed to go. Noah stood over Velraka, his eyes calm but filled with quiet strength. He didn't gloat. He didn't boast. He simply offered her a chance to rise again. His words echoed through the arena. It's not too late to choose a different path. You don't have to fight for them anymore. For a moment, Velraka just lay there, breathing heavily, her pride shattered. She looked up at Noah, her chest rising and falling with each deep breath. She had been trained to see humans as nothing more than tools, slaves to be used. But now, here was a human standing in front of her, offering her something she never expected, a choice. She reached out, her armored hand grasping his. Slowly, she allowed him to pull her to her feet. The crowd remained silent, watching the scene with growing curiosity. No one had ever seen anything like this. The warrior who had never lost had been brought to her knees by a human. And now she was standing beside him. The silence in the arena was thick with questions, and no one dared to speak. The king, still on his throne, was seething. He had to act. He could not let this stand. His empire was built on strength, and the human had shown that they were not weak. He had to prove that Velfar was still in control. "Seize them," the king shouted, his voice loud and commanding. The guards hesitated, glancing at one another, uncertain of what to do. Velraka, once the perfect soldier, was now standing beside the human. She had failed the king. She had failed the empire. "No," Velraka called out. Her voice, though still firm, was different now. She stepped forward, standing in front of Noah. "I will not fight for you anymore, my king." The crowd gasped. This was not what anyone expected. Velraka had always been loyal to the king. She had always followed his commands without question. But now she was defying him. And it wasn't just because of the fight. It was because she had seen the truth in Noah's eyes. She had seen the strength of a people who had been forgotten. "Velraka, you are a traitor," the king hissed. His face twisted with anger, but he held his position. "You will regret this." "I regret nothing," Velraka replied, her voice steady. "I will stand with the humans, with Noah, and with the truth." Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. "You made the right choice. Together, we can change things." Back in the palace, Kiran was watching from a hidden corner. He had seen everything, heard every word. He had always been loyal to his people, but now he couldn't deny what he had witnessed in the arena. Noah had shown them a different way. He had shown them that the strength of humans wasn't just in their bodies, but in their hearts, their minds, and their will to fight for what was right. Kiran's heart was heavy with the weight of his decision. He had always followed orders, but now he was torn. He had seen the truth, just as Velraka had, and he knew what he had to do. The king's voice echoed through the arena. "If you think you can change things, you are a fool," he spat. "I will make sure you both pay for this betrayal." Noah stood tall. "You can try, but we won't go down without a fight. Not anymore." As the king's guards moved toward them, Velraka stepped forward, raising her hand. "We don't need to fight you, my king. We just need to show the truth. And when people see it, they'll stand with us." The king sneered. "You think they will choose you over me? I know they will," Noah said, his voice calm but confident. "The truth is stronger than any empire." With a sharp movement, Velraka drew her sword from its sheath. She didn't point it at the king, but held it high in the air. "This is no longer about one fight. This is about the future, and we will fight for it." For a moment, the king's eyes flickered with uncertainty. The entire arena was watching. He could feel the change in the air. His empire was shaking. The people were no longer afraid. "You've made a grave mistake," the king said, his voice low with menace. But Veloreka and Noah didn't flinch. They stood tall together, the weight of the moment heavy on their shoulders. In the weeks that followed, the world of Velfar began to change. The truth spread quickly. Humans who had been held captive for generations rose up. The voices that had been silenced for so long were now speaking out, and the once powerful empire of Velfar was beginning to crumble. Noah and Veloreka became symbols of change. Together, they led a movement, one that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. They fought not with weapons, but with truth, and soon the empire would see that the strength of the human spirit could never be broken.